So this evening, I welcome Miriam and Jerry and Baruch to Torah is for Everyone. Tonight, we're going to look at, I'm going to begin a little differently this week. Each week, I'm doing it a little differently. It depends on a feeling that I get, or an instinct, or a thought. And we have there are two portions in the Torah this week. One, we begin with Vayikra, Leviticus, which is about offerings, and it's very interesting. And the second one is in the book of Deuteronomy. and the Deuteronomy, the reason we read it, it's because it's called Shabbat Zechor, which is the Shabbat of remembrance. And what are we remembering? We're just before Purim. So we're remembering what Haman did to us a long time ago when he was the viceroy in a city named Shushan, which is in modern-day Iran, and he had a hatred for the Jews. And it didn't come out of nowhere. So let's look at where it came from. Let me share the screen. And I'm going to first start with Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 17 to 19. Jerry, do you want to read it?
I'm a little bit chizrik tonight, as you hear.
You're a little bit what?
I'm a little hoarse now.
Okay. I don't want you to be a horse. I'd prefer that you were a donkey, but it's okay. I'll read.
What about a camel?
Okay, camel's good too. I also have a horse voice. Remember what Amalek was a tribe. When we were leaving Egypt, just as we were set free, this is what happened. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how he surprised you on the way when you were faint and weary, and attacked all who were weak from behind, because he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has granted you rest from all the surrounding enemies in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. This was a command of God. He told us when we're in the land, blot out, that we should blot out. It wasn't that he was going to blot out. We needed to do that. So now let me go to what happened I guess it's a few hundred years later, to tell you the truth. I didn't take a look at when it was, but we're now, oops, sorry, wrong one. New share, that's my message. Second Aliyah, where are you? Hold on. Sorry. Let me stop the share. Let me find out where I am. Oh, I know what happened. Okay, let me go back. Here, it's right here. Can you see this Haftorah portion? Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're at the time of Samuel. Samuel was our very first prophet. This is what the Lord of hosts said. I hold Amalek to account for what they did to Israel, for the assault upon them on their way up from Egypt. So this is quite a bit after we became a nation. We were living in the land, and we had our prophet Samuel. So we know that it's much later. Now go and attack Amalek and completely destroy all that they have. Spare no one, but kill alike men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, cattle and donkeys. Imagine if they said that today. All the leftists would be up in arms.
Camels and donkeys.
Camels and donkeys, yeah. All look at how the world would be in an uproar. Look at even today, how they're in an uproar for us defending ourselves in Gaza. Saul summoned the people and counted them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. And Saul said to the Kenites, Go, leave, get away from the Amalekites, lest I destroy you along with them. For you showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they left Egypt. So the Kenites withdrew from among the Amalekites. And Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shear, that is close to Egypt. And he captured Agag, king of the Amalekites. He captured them alive and completely destroyed all the people, putting them to the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, the best of the sheep, the oxen, even the fatlings, the lambs, and everything else that had value. He would not destroy them, but they utterly destroyed only what was cheap and worthless. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned away from me and has not carried out my commands. And it grieved Samuel so that he cried out to the Lord all night. And Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul. Samuel was told, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he's erecting a monument for himself, and he has left and went down to Gilgal. Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed are you of the Lord. I have fulfilled the Lord's command. Look at what Saul is saying. Saul is saying to him, I have fulfilled the Lord's command. So Samuel said, then what is this bleating of sheep in my ears and the lowing of oxen that I hear? And Saul said, well, they were brought from the Amalekites, for the people spared the choicest of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Then Samuel said to Saul, stop. Let me tell you what the Lord has said to me last night. Speak, he replied. And Samuel said, you may look small in your own sight, but you are made chief of the tribes of Israel. The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and the Lord sent you on a mission, saying, go and utterly destroy the sinful Amalekites and fight them until you have exterminated them. Why then did you disobey the voice of the Lord, swoop down on the spoil, and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord? And Saul said to Samuel, but I did obey the voice of the Lord. Look how he's I'm telling you, he doesn't know his own mind. I went on the mission that the Lord sent me. I captured Agag, the king of Amalek, and I utterly destroyed the Amalekites. What is he? He's nuts? But the people took the spoil, the sheep, the oxen, the people. He's blaming it on the people, like Aaron blamed the people for the golden calf. That's our nature. It's so easy to blame others. But the people took the spoil, the sheep, the oxen, the best of the, look what he's saying about the things that he kept, the best of the devoted things to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal. He's saying that he saved all those things to sacrifice to God. Look how honorable he was. But Samuel said, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice as much as in obedience to the Lord's command? Surely to obey is better than sacrifice, and to comply better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of witchcraft or divination, and defiance, stubborn pride, is like iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the Lord's command, he has also rejected you as king.
We often rationalize our behavior and we become self-righteous. It makes something that's really obviously evil or disobedient, we turn it into something righteous. It's really for our own needs. We're care about ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, this is quite powerful.
Saul said to Samuel, I did wrong to transgress the command of the Lord and your instructions because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. You see, again, he's blaming them instead of taking responsibility for what he did. This is the nature of humans. Adam, when he was confronted by God for what he did with the fruit, eating it in the garden, he blamed Eve and he blamed God. The woman you gave me. Eve blamed the snake and she blamed God. The snake you made. This is what we do. This is why it's perfect to read it at the time of Vayikra. Please, I beg you to forgive my offense and come back with me. Come back with me so that I may bow low to the Lord. He wanted Samuel to support him when he goes before God in a show to bow before God. He says, your God. He didn't say my God. Remember, Saul never admitted that he was his God. He was Samuel's God. But Samuel said to Saul, I will not return to you, for you have rejected the Lord's command, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel. And as Samuel turned to leave, Saul grabbed the corner of his robe, and he tore it. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel away from you this very day, and has given it to another who is worthier than you. That's how we know that it was King David who was going to be the king next. But you can see how when we disobey, now we may not understand why God has asked us to do things. He gave us 10 commandments, and he told us, if you will obey, I will protect you. If you do not obey, your enemy will come against you. The first enemy that we read about that came against us were the Amalekites. This was a nation that was filled with evil, paganism to the height. It was a merciless time. And then let's go to Vayikra to read it in this light. Because remember, if Saul had done what God asked him to do and got rid of all the Amalekites, we would not be celebrating Purim on Sunday, this coming Sunday. There would be no Purim because Haman was a descendant of King Agag. Now remember, Samuel killed King Agag, but the people were kept alive. There were women, there were children. It says the best of the women, the best of the children, the best of the cattle were kept alive. So here, the hatred that would have been passed down from generation to generation through these people surfaced 500 years later when we were captives. First, we went into captivity into Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq, and then we were taken into captivity when the Babylonians were defeated by the Persians. So here we're still in Persia. In Babylon, we were able, this would have been later, when King Darius allowed us to go rebuild the wall. Oh, sorry, that was later. But because King Saul didn't do that, this man Haman, who had a hatred that he was raised with, change one letter, and we have Hamas. And these people, these children, are raised from the time they're infants practically. They go to school learning to hate the Jews, learning to kill the Jews. It's the same hatred. Even Arafat said that he was an Amalekite. This spirit of wickedness is part of the nations that have no idea who the God of Israel is. And that's why we're celebrating Purim on Sunday, to realize Exactly. There's a history behind it. It didn't just happen overnight. So now we're going to go to, I'm going to
Just
share
one
this.
thing,
Yes.
I just find it really amazing, like just the whole spiritual world.
Yes.
Because if you just listen to this and hear, cause and effect, this happened and that happened, yeah, it's amazing, but there's so many other factors involved. But when you think of this, whether you believe it or not, I'm just talking for myself. I can't, but that we live in a world that's made of the spiritual, the physical, the emotional, all of these things. So when you think of it on a bigger level, like how some things that seem to be wicked and evil are like the killing of all the women and children, but really, these same people were offering human sacrifices, etc., etc. And there's something that happens in the spiritual realm that's even worse than physical things.
Did you listen to my message for Shabbat?
Which message?
The one that you're giving is my message for Shabbat.
Oh, okay. Also, I'll give it instead. Joking, or joking.
Honestly, that's
but it's
exactly
true,
what
because
this is a spiritual war.
it really is a spiritual war, and the
Yeah.
consequences in our lives of things we do and things we allow are much. I'm not excusing killing at all, but sometimes it's not always what it appears. It's a blackness. It's evil. It's death of the worst kind.
Exactly.
And
And if
that's
God, the God of light, the God of love, the God of mercy, told us to wipe out this nation, he had a reason. When we take it upon ourselves to put ourselves in the position of God, we don't know the consequences of that. And we're doing this every single day of our lives. And with the little things that are going on in the society today, with it's like this whole idea of abortion. I listened to President Biden talk about, he would never mention the word abortion. The word that he used was, it was a double word. Oh my goodness, excuse me for not remembering. But it's almost like the right over the woman's, it's a right over my body. It's a right of choice. They use all these things, but they never address the fact that millions and millions of babies around the world every year are being murdered. Nobody wants to look at that. It's easy to look away. Oh, I have a choice over my body. Of course you have a choice over your body. Then be careful. Don't get pregnant. Have sex within a marriage. Learn to do things in the right way. There are many other ways of handling that situation than killing innocent children and innocent babies. We used to say, oh, you're with child. Now they say, oh, there's a fetus growing in you. They don't admit really what's going on. So anyway, but that's exactly what this is. And we don't realize the repercussions of those decisions that we're making. If we think, when God said to Cain, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground because he killed his brother. You don't think that the blood of these innocent babies are crying out from the ground to our Father in heaven? Because the only way we can justify that's a good thing is, sorry, Jerry, did I wake you up?
No, I was listening.
Okay. The only way that we could justify that is by saying there is no God. But what I want to do is I want to go to Leviticus, because that's a very important, that's a background for what we're going to be reading here. Vayikra. You can see it says here, and God, Vayikra, called Moses. Vayikra el Moshe, V'daber Adonai elav. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, When any of you, and the word for any of you in the Hebrew is Adam. Now, the word Adam, when it's used in the scripture as a noun, refers to a human being. It could be male, it could be a female, it could be a native-born Israelite, or the ger, the stranger among us. Remember, we left. This was taking place, the scenario here with Vayikra was taking place over a 1-month period. We had just finished building the Mishkan. And now the Kohanim are inaugurated, and God, through Moses, is giving them the instructions for the offerings. Vayikra will cover 5 types of offerings, and each of them have a specific purpose, which I'm not going to go into tonight, but they all have a purpose. The one that we're looking at here is a special offering, which we'll see in verse 3. When any of you, Adam, any human being, male or female, Jew or Gentile, presents an offering of cattle to the Lord, to Yud-He Vav-He, you shall choose your offering from the herd or from the cattle. So here it says, ki yakriv. It's like who, the word yakriv, it has 3 letters that makes its root, a kuf, a resh, and a vet. And the root of that is kerev. It means to draw near. Here it is again. Karban. The korban is the offering, but it's the same root. It means when you want to draw near, you want to be able to approach, to be presentable to God. And here it says, if you're offering im olah, the word olah is translated as burnt offering. But really, when you think of what the word means, if you make aliyah to Israel, you are called, the people who do that are called olim. They are going up to Israel. They're going up. You make aliyah. You go up to Israel. You go up to Jerusalem. It's the idea of elevation. So it's more of an elevation offering from the herd. You shall make your offering a male without blemish. You shall bring it to the tent of meeting for acceptance on your behalf before the Lord. Now look how many times here. In 2 verses, we're going to see that same root. Here it's korbano, and then it says here, yikravenu, again the same kuf, resh, vet, and here again, yakriv. So 5 times we see the same word, approach. And Hebrew is such a picture language. It's a language that says when you want to be able to approach God, when you want to draw near to the presence of light, these are the things that you're going to have to do. And he was speaking to people, you and I. You shall lay a hand, and the word for lay is smicha. The same thing that happened in my community many years ago, in 2010, I'll never forget it, when the rabbi laid smicha on me, gave me smicha, I was ordained to be able to be a teacher, to be able to be a minister in this community, which I am using today. And I never realized that I would be able to do that, but I have that ordination. But here, it was to give me a role in the community. Here, the offering, you shall lay a hand on the head of the animal. It's almost like he had a role so that it would be so that the animal's death would be acceptable on his behalf. It says, le kaper, alive. Kaper means covering. So God would cover whatever you had done, and he would forgive you. This was the scenario of what was taking place.
A covering doesn't, maybe, you know, just so people understand, covering doesn't mean
Washing it away.
washing it away or taking your sin away. It means kind of protecting you. So is that right? A protection or not a well, partly a forgiveness.
Yes, it's a forgiveness, but it's like God is saying, you know, Miriam, I've got this covered. I've got your back. You're still going to have to pay the consequences for what you did. Now just picture what's going on here. Here they're at the Mishkan. The people had just spent a year building this place. And now they're ready to bring offerings. They had watched as the Levites went and killed 3,000 of their family members, their brothers, their sisters, their neighbors, their friends, and they were spared. They watched 3,000 die that day at the hand of the Levites. They were spared, and they knew what they did wrong. And now they would be asked to bring these offerings, but bring it willingly when you know that you did something. And the 5 types of offerings would be spelled out for them so that they would know what type of offering to bring for certain types of transgressions that they did. There was no offering, by the way, for intentional sin. These were all things that happened. Either they didn't realize it, they didn't know what they were doing, or they felt guilty for something that had happened. But it wasn't like they premeditated murder, or they went, you know, those last 5 commandments. If they did that on purpose, there was no offering for that. What they would have to do was to do teshuvah, go to God, pay the consequences, and beg to be forgiven. That's a little different than these offerings that we're going to be looking at in Leviticus. Now look what they had to do. Remember, they're coming out of a very pagan world. The gods of the pagans needed to be appeased. Women were sacrificed. Babies were sacrificed on altars. It was when a woman wanted to be pregnant, she would go and to the priests, and they had a ritual where a calf was taken from the mother, wrenched away from the mother. The calf was boiled in the milk of the mother in a merciless way. And the mother, this woman who wanted to be pregnant, would drink that milk and she could get pregnant. That's the mentality of the people. And God was showing them, I'm going to take these offerings that you were used to, and we're going to take them into this Mishkan, but I'm going to redirect it so that you'll look away from the gods of Egypt, away from the mercilessness, to me, and I'm going to give you new things to do. So here they had to still go through. The burnt offering shall be sliced up, flayed, and cut up into sections. Imagine bringing the most beautiful of animals that you had, watching it be cut up into sections. And the sons of Aaron will put fire on the altar and lay out the wood. And Aaron's sons, the Kohanim, shall lay out the sections with the head and the fat on the wood. They would watch this. And then they would have to wash the entrails and legs with water. And they would be watching this. I mean, I don't think I could watch that. That would show them just how horrendous the thing that they did is and the consequences of what they did. And the Kohen shall turn the entire animal into smoke on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. Imagine, how could this possibly be a sweet incense, a sweet odor to God? If you read this without understanding, you'd say, what kind of God are we serving? How could that be a sweet incense? If you're offering for an olah, an elevation offering is from the flock of sheep or goats, You shall make your offering a male without blemish. So we're going at different levels of value. The first one is the bull. The bull is the one who impregnates the flock, very high in value. Now we go to the flock, the sheep or the goats. It shall be slaughtered in the same way, and the blood shall be dashed, cut into sections. It's exactly the same thing that we just read before. Then if you don't have money for the goat, you can bring birds, turtle doves, or pigeons. And look what the Kohen had to do. Pinch off its head. Turn it onto smoke on the altar. The blood shall be drained outside against the side of the altar. He shall remove its crop with its contents and cast it into the place of the ashes at the east of the altar. And this is what our Orthodox Jews want to bring back to Israel. Are they crazy? Why would they want to bring this back? God was weaning the people away from this, not to bring us back, to set us free from this. And here again, the priest shall tear it open by its wings. It's a burnt offering by fire, pleasing incense, a pleasing scent to God. Now, in Christianity, they have used these as the shedding of blood for the forgiveness of sin. But look here what it says next. When a person presents an offering of meal, fine flour, the offering shall be the choicest of flours. The person offering it shall pour oil on it, and lay frankincense on it, and present it. It had to be the best. They were bringing, it's like they were making the best challah, the best bread, the best of what they could make, and present it to Aaron's sons, the Kohanim. And the Kohen shall scoop out of it a handful of its choicest flour and oil, as well as of its frankincense. These were very precious things in those days, precious commodities. And this token portion he shall turn into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. There's no bloodshed here. It's the heart. It's the intention of the heart of the person bringing the offering that was important, not what he brought. And they all would be accepted, but all levels of society, rich or poor, Jew or Gentile. There were no Jews yet, but Israelite and Ger, male or female, all were equal when they decided, when they chose to present these offerings to God. Now, these offerings were also eaten. The remainder of the meal offering shall be for Aaron and his sons. Now, also remember when this was happening. It says in the first day of the first month of the second year. This is when Vayikra took place. What's the first month of year for us? Who remembers?
Nisan,
Nisan. What happens at Nisan?
Pesach.
Pesach. When you present an offering of meal baked in the oven of the finest flour, unleavened cakes, this is Pesach, with oil mixed in, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is a meal offering on a griddle, they're making pancakes, it shall be of choice flour with oil mixed in, unleavened. They were to remember where they came from. Remember Pesach. Always, right to this very day, we need to remember where we come from. Break it into bits, pour oil on it. It is a meal offering. If your offering is a meal offering in a pan, it shall be made of choice flour and oil. When you present to the Lord a meal offering that is made in any of these ways, it's to be brought to the Kohen, who shall take it up to the altar. The Kohen shall remove a token portion from the meal offering, turn it into smoke as an offering by fire of pleasing aroma to the Lord. What could be so pleasing about all these offerings to God? That's a really important question, and we'll talk about that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me now.
No, I'm kind. I hear you asking a question.
Yeah.
Well, I guess because it's a way of having a relationship to God, and He wants to have a relationship with us, and He wants us to examine ourselves and examine what we've done that may not be whatever kind or walking with God, etc. So it has to do with our relationship with God.
Exactly. So just imagine the people there coming. Here we're in the camp. Okay, we have the tribes all set out. We're in the camp, and it's the day to bring these offerings to the Mishkan. Now, those who knew that they had something to confess, something to talk about, like today we would go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Instead, they would be walking with their offering in front of everybody. It was a very humbling experience because the people were looking at them knowing that they did something that needed to be brought to Kohen. You know, when you have to admit that you've done something.
So, in other words, are all these offerings like mandatory? Does everyone have to?
No, they
so
were
that's
willing
all
offering.
right. Okay, so that's the point, because that's really important.
Exactly. The person who knew that they had done something to transgress any of the 5 different offerings. The 5 offerings represented something, and it wasn't all about transgression. Like there's the offering, oh my goodness, the offering of shalom, like the offering of todah, the thanksgiving offering. They may bring this just to thank God for something they'd done in their lives. There was a guilt. They felt guilty about doing something that would have hurt another person. So they would come to them. So all those offerings had a reason, and the people were given the opportunity to release. This is cathartic. If we had that today, there would be no mental illness.
Exactly. As opposed to also the system they were leaving, which was not a relational system. It was more a one way where you're appeasing the gods. You're trembling before this whatever you attribute to power to this God, and you're doing it to be, for the God to be subdued or appeased. So it's not a relationship, it's just a fearful encounter.
Exactly.
And that's why this is so special. It's so different.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
they had to be trained in this way because you couldn't, the whole concept of sacrifice was a primeval ancient one, and it wasn't, it was, it wasn't a system that came from God. So God's using what they knew. That's what you said before.
Exactly. He doesn't wrench us away. It's like when we go through a process of healing, it doesn't happen overnight. He doesn't wrench us out of the situation that we have to heal from, but he comes through it with us. So here he's introducing a new way of the offerings, which would eventually be replaced with something else, which would be gone. It reminded me a little bit about when my older daughter was 2 years old, and she took my keys out of my purse, and I saw her with the keys, and she was heading straight for the electrical socket in the wall. And I went over to her very quickly, very calmly, and I took her by the hand. And instead of yelling and screaming my head off with poor kid, what are you going to do? Because she didn't know. I took her to the door, and I showed her how to put the key in the door. So she was redirected.
Right.
God was redirecting us away from paganism to him. He would have his own rituals, his own traditions, which is what we're seeing here. And eventually, even these rituals would no longer be needed because they would become part of us. Like today, we don't have to go to a temple, to a mishkan. We can go directly to him. We can, you know, sometimes when I'm talking to you, Miriam, about something that I feel so bad about that I did in the past, and it's cathartic because you don't judge what what I've done, but we can talk about it, and then together with you, I can go before my God and ask for forgiveness, and I can be forgiven. We have that opportunity today. That's why
Right.
we don't need the temple or the Mishkan anymore.
Right. Could you imagine? Yeah, like you said before, reinstating this complete system of sacrifice. You know, cows and sheep and goats and you know,
Yeah,
it just
why?
that yeah, it doesn't apply now.
No, it doesn't
It was
apply.
a teaching. It was a way of. Could you imagine if I had to sacrifice Clover? Oh my
But
God.
no, he wasn't. It wasn't presentable.
Yeah, he
God
wasn't
doesn't accept
kosher.
animals. No, but but the idea also is that, um, oh, my brain just went somewhere else.
Peggy,
Okay, we'll
Peggy,
continue.
I think I know what you were going to
Yes.
hello.
say
What, Miriam? Hold
for
on,
Peggy,
Brian.
about about um, how an innocent animal's death would provoke us into knowing or understanding what we have, you know, the stuff we have done that's really wrong. No, so that to see
Exactly.
an innocent animal.
And it's more than an innocent animal. It's our animal. We raised it from a calf. We fed it. We nurtured it. When it was sick, we were there, and it was the best of the flock.
Yeah,
There's a price to pay for the things that we do. When we're looking at what's going on in the world, there's a price to pay for what's going on. Yes, Baruch, what were you going to say?
You're Deborah, when she put in one side the key in one side of the plug, can't get no shock. She have to put in two sides to get a shock.
Well, I didn't know that. I'm not as smart as you are. All I knew is I didn't want her to put any metal object into an electrical socket, just in case.
Well, I before I had a bunk bed and I was on the bunk bed. The light wasn't in the socket, but I didn't know it was on. So when I put my finger, I touched the piece inside. Plus, I hit the side of the thing, and I got thrown off.
See, there was
off the roof.
nobody there to show you the right way to do it. Now
No,
you
no,
know.
you can't touch it. If you just one side, no shot. If you put
Yeah.
both sides, because in the lamp contact thing, in the bottom of the thing is on, and the side is on, and you're
Right.
touching the two things together. That's why you get the shock.
So now you know not to do that anymore.
No.
Some people learn with other people teaching us, and some people learn by doing things and making a mistake. We learn the hard way.
Here's
So
another thing. In camp, there was a wire along the wall wrapped in metal. I
yeah,
was in the water. You figured that was insulation, but I touched the wall and I got a shock, and I was in the water.
it's amazing you're still with us.
Yeah.
Did that knock some sense into you? All right, let's continue. You shall season your every offering of meal with salt. This was to eat, and no wonder I like salt so much. You shall not omit from your meal offering the salt of your covenant with God. With all your offerings, you must offer salt. It was a preservative. Melach was a very high-priced commodity in those days. Remember, we're dealing with people who are living in the desert, and we have to try to take the principles, not literally. How do we take the principles of what's being taught here to us out and bring it to today? What are the gods that we submit to today? Like when I was talking before of the of abortion, we are submitting to the gods of convenience. There are 71 million abortions done per year by people who just think it's just not convenient for me to have a child at this time in my life. And so that baby is sacrificed on the altar of convenience. And these were some of the offerings. Okay, let's continue on. It's all a repeat. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the idea continues to be the same. Let's continue. I'm sorry, I'm just going quickly here because they're the same offerings. And this is a hukat. It says it's a hukah, which is a regulation or a ruling or an injunction that may not have an understanding according to our understanding, but we have to do it because God said so. This is a hukat olam, forever, ledorotechem, in all our generations, bechol mishpotechem, in all our families, in all the places that we live. Kol halev, we must halev, in the hearts of every person. We're not to eat fat or blood. It's funny, I remember just fat, blood.
Yeah, I was thinking that because we always eat fat. How do you avoid fat?
Yeah, well, you must not eat fat or blood. Well, I guess we can't avoid it, but maybe that's one of the reasons we get sick. Who knows? But I love the fat. And it's, I guess God is saying that this is just not good for us. There's maybe healthy fats, and there are not fats that are not healthy.
Maybe they were eating much huge, like mostly when people eat meat, they cut off the fat,
Yeah.
and there's some fat left, but maybe, I don't know, it was huge chunks.
Yes. So I'm not going to continue the whole thing because basically the idea as we go through the book of Vayikra is for us to try to glean what it is about these offerings that we can apply to our lives today. And we'll be looking at some of the types of offerings there are, and if we could only understand that each of us, I heard somebody say that there really is no such thing as darkness. That darkness is just the absence of light. And that to me is a very deep thought. That, we're living in a world where we look at darkness as evil. Evil is the absence.
That was what we were talking about, and what Einstein said. But it's also, that was my disagreement with Rabbi
Yes.
Percy, which is okay, but I didn't agree with him on that subject. But that's what Einstein was talking about, the nature of, he says there's no studies that talk about the existence of darkness. You could only talk about light. And that's what I'm not trying to toot my horn, but just on an intuitive level, and also what I've read of different things, that evil, when you say God created evil, the reason I always argued against it is because it's not that God created, like, boom, a thing called evil, but it's like the absence of God is evil, and the absence of light is dark. But you can only examine light. Light has properties that you can examine. Darkness has no properties except the absence of light.
Except that the Torah does say that he created light and he created.
But it didn't.
He brought the
but
choshech. He brought the choshech. He said, he says he created good and evil. He says it himself. So
Okay, well, I
for
have
us,
to, I know, for my personal satisfaction, I have to see exactly what that means. I
yeah,
don't think it
we'd
means
have
it
to go and
the
read it
way,
again.
the way it could sound like, here's a cup and here's evil and here's.
Because we can't understand the nature of the soul, of the spirit. We can't go to those
right.
places because we're human. We're
No,
three-dimensional.
I agree. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
So we can't explain it.
No,
But what we can explain is that the more darkness is allowed to exist on this planet, like people now are getting absolutely fed up with the wokeness, with the small minority who's making such a big noise about gender, about so many things that are driving people crazy. People are starting now more and more to speak up. And the answer is by returning to light, by returning to goodness, by returning to God's words, his commandments. When he gave us his commandments, he wanted us to be protected. He wanted us to be safe because he knows what happens to us when darkness reigns, when darkness rules. When darkness rules, we have Hamas. When darkness rules, we have Haman at Purim time who wants to destroy with the Amalekites.
I guess just what I'm saying, and I agree with what you're saying, then I'll let this go. But when it says God created good and evil or darkness, it's not the same kind of darkness that we as humans in our limited way see as evil or darkness. That's not, I think there's something mystical about that beginning time. It's not like God created Hamas and he created, like, I think Hamas is an absence, just as light could be examined and looked at, and darkness is just an absence of light. I think it's the same with a lot of what's happening in the world. We're where there's darkness, a light can't function, can't work in darkness.
That's why when we think that we are not important, the more we spread light, the more we do good things. I think that's why this whole thing with Rabbi Schneerson is do acts of kindness. He's right. We need to do acts of kindness, but there's also we have to go beyond an act of kindness to the level of intention. It's really important because we've been given the gift of free will. We have choices to make. And God knows the hearts of the people. God knows our hearts. So if we are forced, let's say, to bring an offering, we cannot force anybody else to go before God, to be able to approach God if we're not willing. It has to come from our kishkas, from inside. Otherwise, it's meaningless. There are people who donate a lot of money because they want to see their name on a plaque. They have extra, so they give, but not because they really, some people care and some people don't. There are those who have very little, but they give everything. So we always, every single day have to, and it's a big job. It's exhausting. I think that's sometimes why I get so tired, because we're constantly examining ourselves as someone who believes in a creator, someone who believes in God. And we know that we can make a difference in this world. We have to constantly examine our motives. Why am I doing this? Is it for good? Is it helping others? Am I serving my community? Or am I being selfish? King Saul was selfish, totally self-centered. He saw the spoil that he got from the Amalekites. He wasn't interested in following God. And
Yeah, it's that
we
time
need,
of the night.
sorry, Brian, I'm going to put you on mute, okay? So we need to be interested in what God has to say to us and dig in to these verses in the Torah to see what are they really saying for us today, not to go back and live at those times. We're not living at those times. At those times, an abortion would have been unheard of because women they tried to be pregnant. The more family, the more children they had, the better. But they had community. The community was together. There was more support in those days than there are now. A lot of these young women, I feel bad for a lot of women who feel so alone. And I was one. I was in a miserable marriage, very unhappy. And I fell pregnant. And all I could think was leaving the marriage, and I got pregnant. And the only thing, and I didn't know what to do. In those days, I didn't know about it. They told us that it was just cells, that at 10 weeks, it was nothing. It's easy to have an abortion. And so I bowed to the God of convenience because I could not stay in that situation. Years later, when I understood that at 10 weeks, that child has fully formed feet, fully formed like a body already, and that the Torah says that the soul is already there at conception. that's when I really had to go before God. It was an unintentional, it wasn't an intentional sin, but I needed to go before God to ask him for forgiveness. And to forgive myself took me time. But there are things that we do every single day. And the more we go to God with these things, the more the light can spread, the more the light can fill this world, so that the enemy will be turned away, that God himself will defeat our enemies as he promised to do in our Torah. So that's the message that I wanted to bring for tonight. Jerry, do you have anything to add to this conversation?
No, that was nice conversation. It's as usual.
Okay, that's it. You're a very wise man, you have a lot of insight, and it would be good to hear what you have to say. Nothing?
Peggy, I
Uh,
feel like I
I
did
I
in
was
grade
just
one when the teachers would ask me.
I was just thinking about Baruch and his stuff, that he has certain understanding of one side of the plug. He has certain understanding that he remembers of people going into the body. He has
Yeah, Brian is Brian. I could call him Brian Google because he's so filled with information and experiences that very few people take the time to find out. But over the years, I've known him now, 33 years, 32 years, I've known Brian, and I've seen him grow and change. And like all of us, we've grown and we've changed. But when you're growing with God, it's far better than growing without God. That's all I can say. Well, Jared, do you want to finish with the Aaronic benediction?
the Aaronic benediction is said with love. B'ahavah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'kedushaso el shel Aaron v'tzivon levarech es amo Yisrael b'ahavah. Yevarechecho Adonai v'yishmerecho. Yair Adonai panav elecho v'chuneko. Yiso Adonai panav elecho v'yasem lecho shalom. V'samu et shemi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani arvorchem.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. So shall they put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Tomorrow at 11:30, there's a time when many of the people in the Jewish community and those who stand for Israel will be saying together, 11:30 our time here, it's in the evening
It's 5:30
in Israel.
right?
In Israel, yeah. We'll be saying the Shema. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And may we all, in one voice, call out for our God. And may he bring peace to this planet and
Free the hostages.
and free the hostages. Exactly. So I wish you all, thank you all for joining in again this evening. Thank you, Brian, Baruch, for your input, Miriam for yours. Jerry, it's always a delight to see you. And I look forward to seeing you next week again. So I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I wish you a Hag, a Purim Sameach. It's not a Chag, Purim Sameach, where we celebrate the fact that they tried to kill us, but we're still here. Thank you, God. Good night, everybody.